morning everyone. Today we are in Arlington, Texas, and today I'm going to be doing a recessed panel wainscoting, and I'm going to show you how to do this from start to finish, as detailed as I can be with the time that we have. So we got a 14-foot wall inside, and we will be using MDF for our materials and finger joint pine for our trim pieces. So like I said, we're going to try to be as detailed as we can, and we'll go inside and get started. So I know from the plans that I have my wainscoting ultimate height at 42 inches. So what I'm going to do right here is just hold up the tape measure from the floor to here and just make a 42, a line at 42. And then I come over to this corner and do the same exact thing. And then we're just going to take a snap line, connect the dots, pull a line, and that'll show us, that'll give us a good reference as to what we're working with when we start installing the pieces. So that gives us a good reference. Now when we actually build it and lay our MDF sheets up there, we'll know exactly where they need to go. So after we snapped that first line, we went ahead and snapped the rest of the lines just to show you what it's going to look like. Kind of, you can get a visual on it before we get started. But basically the top piece, the first line segment, is a 3.5 inch chair rail. The bottom pieces are a 5 1/4 inch base and a 9.5 inch piece of MDF, which sits behind the base, and that'll all make sense later. And then the tricky part with this wainscoting stuff that I know a lot of people have questions about is how do you get your squares to lay out exactly. And I want to talk real quick about that. Basically what you need to do is figure out how thick your inside stiles are going to be. So we know ours are going to be 3.5 inches, and we went ahead and we got a full measurement from one end of this wall to the other, and it was 173.25, I believe. Yeah, it was 173.25. So what we did there is we just kind of played with the numbers a little bit, and you're going to have to do this. You're going to have to visualize how many squares can you fit on this wall to accomplish your desired look that you're going for. Really, you could do 2 squares and 2 giant squares, but that wouldn't look good. So it's going to have to be what looks the best, and the wall will kind of lay itself out. So we went ahead and ripped our board down to the height that we needed, and now what I'm going to do is cut out for any of my plugs. So I cut out for that plug right there, as you can see, and then we'll be able to actually get this wall done with just 2 of these sheets right here. So what I'm going to do now is take some drywall adhesive. This is OSI. We use it on anytime we're doing wainscoting, and a piece of scrap. This is to smooth it around. If you don't use adhesive, what you're going to find is whenever after you're all done and you go and touch it, this board is really thin, so it's probably going to move on you. So you definitely want to use adhesive when you're doing this, and it's just the professional way to do it, so you should do it this way. So what I do is I just drag this around all over. There's no really method to it, you just want to get coverage everywhere. And if you're wondering why I didn't just build my stiles and rails first and then cut out small squares of MDF sheets to put inside, well, the reason I do it this way is because when you do it the other way, where you put your stiles and rails on first and then fill in what's left over with MDF, you lose a whole 1/4 inch of depth. And the whole point of recessed panel wainscoting is you get that depth in the wall, and it looks very detailed. So I never like to do it that way. I think that way is kind of pointless to do it that way. This is the way we always do it. We put a whole sheet on, and then we build our paneling on top of that. So now that I got that done, what you want to do, take a piece of scrap or something and kind of trowel this stuff out. Just kind of move it around. If you don't do that, then you will find that it's uneven when you go to push on it. So it'll almost be worse than if you just didn't even use it. So you definitely want to do this too. Okay, so I got this first board with the adhesive on it. So now what I want to do is, since I've got my stiles marked out already, I want to kind of draw reference points up to the top, because once I put this on, I won't be able to see it. And what this is doing is it's not really making it so I don't forget where they are. It's so I know where I can nail on this. So I know I'm going to have a stile right there. I can nail on this board right there because it's going to get covered by the actual stile. So I'm just going to mark some reference points so I know where I can nail. Pull your plugs through. Try not to get that adhesive on the plug. And I can see my reference points, so I know I can nail all right here. Now obviously I can nail all up here because that's going to be covered by the chair rail and the actual rail. So now that I have it all nailed, what I like to do is just push on it everywhere to get that adhesive to kind of squeeze in there. So just like that. So now that we got that one in, same thing over here. Same setup, another plug, another sheet of MDF. Same exact process. So we'll spare you on that one and we'll show you the next step, which would be actually building the paneling system. The way we're going to attach the stiles to the rails is with a pocket hole. And we've got all 7 of these done. This is the last one. I just thought I would show you real quick. This is the Craig. It's the kind of the middle of the range pocket hole jig. It's not the mini and it's not the big one, but you just clamp it on there on the end of your board after you've set it up for the thickness, and they give you a bit and you just drill each side, take your clamp off, and you have your pocket holes. So why do we do this? Well, the reason we do this is because in theory, you could take your boards, put your base one on, line all these up, nail them in. But the problem with that is none of the walls are ever perfectly flat. So if you do that, you're going to have some boards that are off when they come to line up. So I'll show you what I mean right here. If I were putting this stile on right here and it came like that, well, the wall is not perfect. So maybe this board would actually stick up higher, and that is just horrible. We do not want that. So to avoid that, we just use the pocket holes and make it so we don't have to mess around with that stuff, and this actually lines them up perfect. So yeah, that's how we attach the stiles to the rails. Now we got to lay out the measurements onto the bottom rail and the top rail and clamp these down and screw them in. So we'll show you how to do that right now. So as you can see down here, we have pretty much the whole unit coming together now with the pocket holes all laid out. So we've got all these actually screwed in, and everything is smooth and flush. And the way we did that was just taking a spacer block. We took a spacer block that was the width of our squares, 20 3/4, and just threw that in every time, and we made sure they were perfect that way. And I'm on the last one now, and I just want to show you real quick how we do that. So this one is still loose. What we're going to do is just put our spacer block in, making sure we have all squared up, and then just take our pocket hole and drill, or pocket hole screw and drill, and just get this thing in there. And what you want to do when you put this in, you want to make sure they're flush. So lay it on a flat surface like the floor or something like that, and then you can feel it grabbing. We're doing 2 just so we don't get any twisting in the board when we're trying to install it. 2 will keep it sturdy. So now that we got all of our pocket holes, screwed in to our top rail and our bottom rail. All the stiles are there. We're going to take this unit, turn it around, and place it on the wall. Go ahead and nail it up and everything. One really important thing that you want to make sure of is that when you put this on the wall, that your bottom is on the bottom and your top is on the top. It's really easy to get confused and, you know, accidentally put this thing on upside down, which would be really bad news. So we will we'll do that now. You can see this, you know, this is good luck right here. You know, they say black cats are good luck. But yeah, we'll get to it. Right here we have the paneling just kind of setting in here. It's not nailed up or anything. But this is why we use the pocket holes. It just makes it that much easier. And over here, this right here is really hard to get smooth without the pocket holes. But as you can see, we've done pretty good getting this flush. And we'll probably take an orbital sander and just kind of tap this a little bit with maybe like a 120 or maybe not even that much, like a 200 grit. It's pretty smooth right here. But one thing I'm going to keep in mind when I'm nailing this in, this is our PM or panel mold. It's a pretty common one. It's just panel mold 2. And it's an offset, just like a crown molding. It's got this groove cut out of it and an angle on the bottom of it. So it'll actually set in here just like a crown molding at an angle. And this is just a little tip, but anytime you can avoid filling nail holes, you'll learn real quick in trim carpentry that you will figure out ways to avoid nail holes. So as that piece right there covers about a 1/2 inch, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to shoot right there. That way, I'll show you this. So now it's grabbing right there, and when I come in with this, I do not have to fill that nail hole. So I'm going to shoot around these, get the proper grab. I'm going to shoot up here where the chair rail is going to go and where the base is going to go. And if I do this the right way, shooting in those areas with the nail gun, I will not have to fill a single nail hole on this MDF, which is great. Because if you've worked with MDF, you know the nail holes and stuff, they kind of get puffed up. So you got to use this stuff to your advantage. Think of things like that that can make it go a lot smoother for you. So we're going to tack this up, nail it in everywhere. It's already level. We've already got that all figured out. Then what we're going to do is put our baseboard on, our chair rail, and our top piece, the shoe molding that we're going to use. And then we're going to go ahead and trim all these out, and we'll be ready for prepping and priming, and we'll be good to go at that point. So I'll go ahead and get this done. And I wanted to mention real quick with this piece, the reason we cover the whole wall with the 1/4 inch MDF first is so we get that depth. That's what I was talking about. You can see how much depth I get right here. And the more depth, really the better. Because with the recessed panel wainscoting, you're going for that depth. So I just wanted to mention that real quick. If I brought it out a 1/4 inch, I would lose that much more depth. So that's my logic on that, and I think it's accurate. So these are pretty smooth, but like I was saying, I'm going to knock them down with some sandpaper, some 220. So just gonna they're really smooth. Just gonna knock them down real quick, just like this. Always sand before you start trimming it out, because if I were to trim this out and then try to sand, I would have to sand around the trim. So we'll do a final sanding at the very end with a sanding sponge, and then we'll be ready to paint it after that. But right now we're going to work on some trim. We'll start with the chair rail, the baseboard, and then we'll go to the inside panel moldings. We just got the chair rail in and the top piece, which is just a shoe molding. A shoe molding is what goes on your floor to hide the gap between the baseboards and the hardwood floors. But we use it for other purposes, and in this case we used it to hide the seam where the chair rail and that MDF board meet. So you can't see that seam. You're just going to see this rounded over shoe molding, which kind of beefs up the chair rail and it also it just looks great when it makes it a little bit bigger. So we went ahead and caulked that way it can start drying, because we're trying to sand in a couple of hours, and we don't want to sand any wet caulking, so we went ahead and took care of that. But now, so we're pretty much getting close to the end of this as far as installation. The last thing to do is put our PM in, and I talked a little bit about this earlier. It's going to sit and cradle in here just like a crown molding. So what we can do, an advantage to us using that spacer block earlier when we pocket hold everything together, remember we used that spacer block to get our distance correct. One of the advantages of that is that we can just set up a stop block on the miter saw outside and get all of our PMs cut. They're all the exact same, so we'll just get one right, we'll set up a stop block, and then we will just cut them all the same. We need 14 total of each of the horizontals and 14 total each of the verticals. So that's the last thing we got to do. We'll go outside, we'll cut those, we'll bring them all in, and we'll show you how to put them in. We have now cut all of our panel moldings and we're ready to install them. As you can see, they're all laid out here in the order of installation, basically 2 for each one, and we'll just get to it. Another thing you can do at this point is go ahead and screw your plugs back in. This is a good time to do that, and yeah, that's really it. So these kind of lay in here. There's really you can't really do it wrong because they fall into place. So I'm just gonna start with one. I'll start with this one so you can see, and just see how it won't move. It pushes up against that. So it's already like self-setting. You don't have to do anything to it. So and you can see how perfect these things come together. When you're working with these offset moldings, you do want to make sure that they're pushed all the way against the board that you're working against. That's it for the panel molding. We got all the panel molding inside the squares, and that's it for the installation on all the trim. So the next step is to prime this. We're going to use a Kills fast drying primer, and then after that we will then fill all the nail holes and sand it and get ready for paint. But we've done several projects like this, and we're real fortunate that we're only doing one wall at this house, so we were fortunate to have time to make this video. We've done other videos where we've actually, instead of having this flat sheet right here, we've put a beadboard in the middle, and we did that, but we just didn't have enough time to film it. We did film a antique glaze on that though, and you can just click right here to see that video. But that's it for the installation. Alright, so that's it for the wainscoting installation video. We tried to get as detailed as we could with the time that we had, and we ended up spraying this job with a Sherwin-Williams Promar 200 and a satin finish. And overall it was a good success. We didn't have any touch-ups or discrepancies. We made sure the plate covers for the plugs were on and they were away from any of the panel moldings. We mapped all that stuff out. So hopefully you learned something from this video. And there's a lot of ways you could do wainscoting. There's really, the possibilities are endless with molding. So I mean, there's endless ways to do it. But anyways, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Also, watch out for those things. If they're just gonna tear down your masking.